Chair of tonight's proceeding with Monifa, I would like to acknowledge my previous two speakers, Dr. Tim Gopi Singh and Saddam Hussein. Honorable Kamala Prasad Recessor, Leader of the Opposition and Political Leader of United National Congress, parliamentary and NATEX colleagues, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, viewing and listening all the media platforms here tonight. Tonight, as your opposition chief whip, I join this platform to condemn the growing debt of democracy in our nation and reject the all-out war of this government against our citizens. Governments are elected to serve the people, not suppress them. Governments are elected to develop a nation, not decimate them. Today, we face a war against the democracy and developments of this nation by this PNM government, which we must stop. In Parliament, there has been only one voice for the people of this nation. In Parliament, there has been only one party defending the democracy of this nation. That voice is United National Congress. The United National Congress has become the people's government because in Parliament, we are the only ones fighting for true people-centered representation. As Chief Whip, I'm proud to say that your opposition has stood up, expressed and unmasked the incompetence of this government to the point that they cannot defend their failed performance. In 2021, we have brought motions of no confidence against the Minister of Energy, the Minister of Health, the Minister of Finance, and the National Security Ministers. And we have brought these motions to allow the government and the minister to come to account to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and they failed to account for their stewardship. Even in the 2021 budget, we exposed their repeated lies and promises to the point that by the third day on the budget debate, not a senior minister, not even the Prime Minister could respond to the opposition, the shortest budget response in our history. We have them on the ropes, my brothers and sisters, for the destruction they have brought on our country. No other government has disrespected, disregarded, and shown disdain for our parliament like this administration. Since 2015, this government has broken precedent after precedent in our parliament in an effort to hide their incompetence. They ignore the allocated speaking times. They shut down the opposition from speaking. They unfairly use repetition against us and even fail to give proper notice for major debates, all in an effort to prevent us from exposing them. They have disregarded the voice of the minority. They have oppressed parliamentary accountability. They have stifled the work of joint select committees. Today, MPs, my brothers and sisters, on my way here, I received an order paper for Friday for a sitting in Parliament, where the government would be laying two new bills. One, the Miscellaneous Provision Testing and Identification Bill 2022, being laid by the Attorney General. And I ask, is this the bill that the Attorney General is bringing on Friday about mandatory vaccination for the public servants? And based on what is happening on Friday, we hope that they do not rule raid the Parliament to debate this bill. Is this testing and identification bill, as I said, about government's legislation for the public servants? Is this a bill that would prevent thousands from going to work on Monday the 17th of January, when this mandatory vaccination policy for state workers commences? Up to now, the opposition has not seen this legislation, yet they want to spring it on the country. As opposition chief whip, I support the repeat the position of our leader. The 19 opposition MPs will not be voting for any mandatory vaccination in Parliament. We have always said to you, we support vaccination to save lives, but we will not support the policies that destroy livelihood. In 7 years, this government has not brought a single bill that could secure workers. Yet today, they want to bring a bill that will take away the ability to earn a salary. We in the UNC will only support laws that provide opportunity, unity, and progress of our citizens, not division and destruction. This constant disrespect for Parliament by this government must stop. They may have disregarded the voice of the minority, but we have not been deterred. We have fought for democracy by filing, since August 2020 to present, over 218 questions on notice, over 293 urgent questions in Parliament. We have asked the Prime Minister over 106 Prime Minister's questions. Yet this government continues to make a mockery of our Parliament, because many times they have come unprepared to answer our questions, as they are intent on hiding the truth from you, the citizens. They like to deflect through insults when they don't have answers, by calling our members in Parliament derogatory names, all in an effort to intimidate us from demanding accountability. They lie profusely to deflect their own wrongdoing. As Saddam Hussein, my colleague, said, the AG came in Parliament and used parliamentary privilege to lie on our opposition leader, the Honorable Kamala Persad-Bissessar. And when we called him out, as Saddam had said, he had to apologize, because we were prepared to send him to privilege, and he knew we would have won in privilege. So he apologized. He took the easy way out because he lied in Parliament, and that is his track record. Not only will they force him to offer an apology, they cannot even account for their own performance in Parliament. In March 2021, when we asked the Prime Minister to provide a status on the San Fernando Water Project, he could not answer. My brothers and sisters, for this government, Parliament is not a place to address the needs of your country, but is a place to rubber stamp their own selfish agenda. In November, I raised a matter in my own constituency to the Minister of Agriculture on the collapse of homes by quarrying, state quarrying in the Bellevue in Pointe. And the Minister of Agriculture stated, this is not the place for this matter to be worked out, resolved, or addressed. To date, my brothers and sisters, those families are still waiting for some resolve and some answers from this government. For months, they have been hiding the true state of affairs of Atlantic Train 1. But it was your opposition which forced the Minister of Energy to admit in Parliament that despite $240 million invested by NGC, Atlantic Train 1 was not operational for all of 2021, and still to date, it is not operational. Now, NGC, we would have all seen on the front page of the news, one of the new daily newspapers yesterday and Sunday, about Conrad Enel versus Sharma. And that tells a lot about what is going on in your state, your billion-dollar empire, National Gas Company, headed by the chairman, Conrad Enel, and much more will be said on that at another time. My brothers and sisters, this government defense of waste, corruption, and plundering, as it did in NGC, is nothing new, because this is a government that protected Malcolm Jones. After Malcolm Jones wasted millions of taxpayers' money on a failed World GTL plant, what did they do? This double standard government dismissed the case against him and made him an advisor on energy. After 7 years of this government, the entire energy sector has gone from success and sustainability to scrap iron. The refinery is becoming scrap iron in Pointe. Atlantic Train 1 is becoming scrap iron. The Nykwan plant, which was the World GTL plant, exploded and might also become scrap iron. Many plants in Point Lisa have shut down and will become scrap iron. We have had 7 years of the most catastrophic leadership in the energy sector because of their deceit, their state-sanctioned corruption, and worse, lack of vision, my people. After 7 years without growth in the energy sector, they want to tell us recovery is near. We will not believe a word they say, because it was this Prime Minister who said, we are not closing down Petrotrin, yet 30 days later, it was shut down. It was this Prime Minister who promised OWTU, the refinery, then shafted them after the elections of 2020. They didn't care that over 10,000 lost jobs. They didn't care that over 100,000 were displaced in the fence-line communities. They didn't care that the fuel security and million-dollar assets of this nation were destroyed as the refinery becomes scrap iron. 1 year ago, the Prime Minister boasted about Naikwan would generate $2 billion in taxes for this nation, yet 3 months later, it exploded. Up to this day, the report on this explosion has not been made public, while recently, just last week, we saw Naikwan's Vice President of Global Services, past former independent Senator David Small, announce his resignation a few days after 7 years. Tell us the true story about Naikwan, Prime Minister. It has been lie after lie with this government. They are so deceitful and shameless. In 2018, they boasted that their Houston negotiations would save the energy sector. In 2 years' time, the very negotiations caused the biggest crash in Pointe, with most plants shutting down. Tonight, I want to raise a critical matter in the public domain. Last week, an advertisement was published by Tech, inviting expressions of interest for the supply of electrical power to the Trinidad and Tobago electricity grid in the form of a power purchase agreement, and they wanted expression of interest in something called a floating power plant. This is the expression of interest that was in as an ad in the newspapers, my brothers and sisters. A floating power plant, Tech asking for an expression of interest. I remain bewildered and amazed how a government, one that professes itself to know how to do everything and does nothing, could even give thought to this, a floating power plant, when our plants are operating at 50% capacity. Now, we have 3 power plants in Trinidad. You have the Power Gen, you have TGU, and you have Trinity. And their capacity that they're producing is not being utilized by this country. Yet, Tech has put out an expression of interest for a floating power plant. Tonight, I ask the Minister of Energy or the Minister of Public Utilities, why is there a need to install another power generation plant? One that is of a higher cost and floating out in the sea to provide power to Trinidad and Tobago. Are there plans to shut down our existing power plants? Are there preferred bidders that may have visited our shores and met with government officials in the past? Why 5 to 10 years when we have power purchase agreements to cover these periods already? Why gas and diesel fuel power at a time when both the Prime Minister and the Minister of Energy participated at COP26, where we continue to commit to reducing carbon emissions and global warming? My information is that there's only one company in the world that has the capacity at this time to build a power plant, a floating power plant, and is based in Turkey. And the name of that company is Kapau Ship. That's the name of the company. Will there be a sole select bid for this company to provide a floating power plant? So stay tuned, my brothers and sisters. As I conclude, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, it is time we unite as a people and stand up to this government that continues to betray, belittle, and abandon the best interests of every citizen of this nation. The headlines in today's papers, millions to help the needy, fared gone into the wrong hands, is proof that this government has no regard or commitment to ensuring those suffering in our nation are protected. For them, all the people of this nation are worth is a food basket. All the people of this nation are worth is the promise of a grant and not the actual grant. They believe that the people who they were elected to serve do not deserve progress. We do not deserve accountability or honesty. They believe they can fool us with cheap political tricks, as they did with their failed Roadmap to Recovery Committee. All lies. They promised to address and mitigate the hardship inflicted by COVID-19. Yet today, thousands have lost their jobs, homes, and even on the streets with signs pleading for help. Worst of all, coming out of the pandemic, they promised to lay the foundation of sustained economic recovery. Yet, up to the last budget, not a single measure was implemented to create job or growth. The Rowley regime does not value our citizens. It does not value our economy, our way of life, and our democracy. It is time we unite to bring better governance to this country, which is only possible with the United National Congress and the Honorable Kamala Persad-Bissessar. I thank you.